Hey, it's Rich Schefren. We are ready to get underway. Let me know if you hear me so that I can make sure that I'm not talking to myself muted or something like that. What a beautiful day today, huh? I hope it's as nice wherever you are as where I am. We are in the Hamptons still. I am in my home gym. Uh, and just making sure I'm on the right camera here. I am. And we're going to talk about learning today, as we've been talking about for quite a while. And so, if you can hear me, let me know. Let me know where you're joining us from. It's always nice to have the international crowd that we have. And I've been doing these live streams for the past, I don't know, 2, 3 months. Good morning, Don, or good afternoon, rather. Where is it? Oh, okay. Let's move this a little bit so that we can put it down there. And if you haven't already, let's kind of get that there. And cool, you're hearing me loud and clear. Wow, in Serbia, we got people from all over. We got Stefan from Serbia. We have Tom Spudek. We have Mina from Paris. We have Milos, loud and clear. Elizabeth from Copenhagen, Denmark. Andrew Abramson from New Jersey. Columbus, Ohio, the good Don. Um, Curious, as you guys are telling me where you're from and where you're coming in from, uh, if anyone's new to these live streams, let me know if this is your first time on. I'd love to know what got you on this time as opposed to some of the other times. Maybe it was a topic, and if so, I'd love to know. And yeah, let me know where you guys are coming from. We got Dwayne in Toronto. We got Christopher from London. Nice to talk to you, Christopher. He's loving Steal Our Winners. I've got links for that now, so by next week I can be able to put some links in there. Marlon from St. Louis. We got Tom Spudek from Minnesota. Milos from Serbia. Bernadette from Canada, Quebec City. SoCal. Nice. Motor City. Not the best place to be these days, but not so bad. Can hear me in the UK from Nigeria. Woo. Roscoe, or Roxo from New York City. Stone's throw away. From Venezuela. Nice to see you again, Carlos. Tom, catch as often as possible. You're an old timer, Tom. We've met, haven't we? Believe so. Anyway, all right. So, um, yeah, so we've been talking about learning, and we've been talking about how, your ability to learn is very much correlated with your ability to earn. And nowadays, especially, that is more and more the case. And so, along those lines, what I wanted to do today was I've been on this pursuit recently. I believe that I learn better than most, but I don't believe that I learn as best as I can, and I don't believe I'm being as strategic as I can as it relates to learning. And so, what I wanted to do was to kind of open up this conversation a little bit based on a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about and share with you some of my thoughts, kind of think out loud together. Maybe we can help one another kind of get greater clarity as to the right ratio. And that's really what we're going to talk about a little bit in a little bit. The ratio of input to output. Because very often we can get very slotted on the input side. Those of us who are info fiends, info junkies, to the point that it's a detriment to our output. And I wrote a blog post like about 10 years ago called Decrease the Input, Increase the Output. I revisited that this morning, and I was thinking about that, and I've been working on PKM, personal knowledge management, and trying to make my personal knowledge management the best I possibly can. And so we've had numerous of these live streams where we talked about your future self. And while I haven't necessarily mastered that element of it, the future self, I do think that there's a lot to kind of digest there about who you want to be and what do you need to know that you don't know now to be that, right? And so to kind of start to get to know your future self better and to actually hold yourself accountable to your future self. And so I haven't really kind of flushed that out completely. As I do, I will let you guys know more. But what I have been thinking about is this model as it relates to learning. And that, the one of my favorite futurists who I'm going to um, blank on his name now, but he wrote Future Shock, and he wrote I'm just pulling it up now. Where is Future Shock? Oh, I spelled it wrong. He wrote Future Shock. What else did he write? Um, ugh. Anyway, I think it was in Future Shock where he wrote about how in the future those who can learn, unlearn, and relearn are the ones that are going to actually rule the world. And I just want to see if I could find it. Alvin Toffler, that's his name. So Alvin Toffler, one of my favorite futurists. And what does that really mean? Well, I don't know that the point of us talking today is to really talk about that quote, right? But we do have to recognize the fact that whatever we're doing today is probably not what we're going to be doing in the future. And so that things evolve. Even, the average person will change careers 5 times over the course of their lifetime. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're probably going to change skill sets a lot more frequently than that. And odds are is that you won't be in the same business for your entire life either. And so new opportunities kind of emerge, right? I want to we're going to jump around a little bit, and I hope that's okay for you guys. But by all means, interact with me. If you, I forgot to do some of these things, so let me do these now. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, you should, by all means. And what I want to do is what I'm trying to do, and what I'm trying to do is I am trying to figure out how to best help you as it relates to whatever topic we're talking about on each of these live streams, but do it in a way where I'm actually learning myself as I go, right? I'm trying to work out an argument, trying to figure out a solution. And by doing so, I get to kind of do what I'm talking about actually in this live stream, which is to start moving more of your time from input to processing and output. So what you could say is that for me, this is now no longer an input time, right? This is an output time or a processing time. Depending on whether I come here completely prepared, then it would just be completely output, right? But then if I'm not prepared, then this is really processing time or processing / output. It'll make sense, I think, as I kind of go a little bit deeper. But the goal is to recognize that we're in a different world than we were 20 years ago. And that's cliche in a lot of ways, but so true. And that there was a time, right? Like, let's say just to talk about business, right? Corporate world for a second. There was a time when we could plan a strategy, right? And execute it. So it was a plan and execute. And we've moved to like a just-in-time kind of thing, right? Which is sense and respond. So instead of plan and execute, we've moved from sense and respond because things change so frequently, plans often get outdated. There's a lot of value in planning, but not necessarily in the plan. So now we've moved to sense and respond. Now things are even speeding up even more. So it's like sense and respond is not even enough. We have to anticipate and preempt, right? So we've gone from plan and execute, sense and respond, anticipate, preempt. Now, along those lines, right, one of the concepts that's kind of behind that is strategy is emergent, that we live in a complex system, right? Opportunities pop up, opportunities close down, right? So what we have to do is we have to have better ability to pick up signals from the world, right? One of my performance coaches had this metaphor years ago, talking about, imagine being like a elite a Green Beret, Navy SEAL, like, some kind of elite special forces soldier. And they're taking you out on a run through an obstacle course, but you have no idea whether that run is a mile long or 20 miles long. And you don't know where to go, except they tell you to run, in that direction, and you'll notice what the next marker is. And then at that marker, you'll be told where to go next. That's kind of like life, right? You have no idea how long the course is. You have no idea what obstacles you'll come across. You have no idea what surprises will come your way, but your ability to handle what comes up next is going to determine, how successful you are. And what's going to determine how you handle what comes up next is really your internal resources, what you know, how you think, how you respond. And so what I believe that most of us, well, I would imagine almost nobody is really kind of optimized their ability to bring in information, process it, make connections, output it in the ideal way. But one thing we can say for sure is that if you look at the world's greatest experts or the world's most successful people, they have a tendency to consistently pursue mastery in an ongoing way, whether that's Bill Gates, whether that's Warren Buffett, whether that's Elon Musk. These are learning machines. They're application machines, etc. So I'm going to go back to the comments for a second. But what I want to unpack it with you guys is the process, right, of learning and what the times should be. And I'm really hoping that we can make this somewhat interactive. So let's see. Well, Brandon, let's put this now. Let's move these around a little bit. I'll move this up here. Eric Hoffer, Brandon Jeremy said, that's a great book, True Believer. I don't know if what that was in reference to, Jeremy, but great book by all means. Okay, so let's go here. First time joining live, watched previous ones in the past days. Heard great things from Milos. Oh, very cool. Thank you, Milos. From Matt. Matt from Arkansas. Knowing what to learn. Oh, okay, that's very interesting. Thanks, Win. And don't know why. Oh, no. Alvin Toffler. Eric Hoffer is the one who wrote The True Believer. Alvin Toffler is the one who wrote Future Shock. Got it. All right. So let's see what Don has to say. The ratio is a big problem figuring out what is accurate information from the start nowadays. So much BS and info that falls short of complete on a topic. Yeah, no doubt. Great insights, Rich. Awareness and adaptation is key. Yes. Predictability of what's coming and being ready for it before it happens is one of the things that will keep you moving forward. Yes, certainly. And so does curiosity, if you think about it. Curiosity has you move forward in the kind of the way I'm talking about. I started doing sentence stems last week for the first time. I did it for 10 days in a row, and I'm starting to see improvements with my business. Very cool, Andrew. Glad to hear that. Something we covered quite a ways back. So there's a very well-known model in personal knowledge management, right? Which is called Seek, Sense, and Share. So Seek is basically where you're collecting your information. Sense is going through that information and learning it. And Share is publishing it, doing a live stream about it, writing a blog post about it, recording an audio podcast on it, writing a note about it, whatever. So that's the standard, you could say, personal knowledge management kind of workflow. Seek, sense, share. I think that's weak. I think that's really weak. I think it's really weak because it doesn't really. Seek seems to me to be a couple of things, not just one. And then sense is really not the right way that I would kind of describe processing it, learning it, etc. And share might be okay, but it kind of doesn't seem like that's all there really is. What do you guys think? I'm curious if you guys kind of agree that seek, sense, share is a somewhat limited model. I believe it is. I think that I've been thinking about it, and one of the things that, as I was thinking about it, is that I would break it up into more categories. Let me know if you guys would as well. Would love this to be more back and forth. I think that I kind of see it as maybe 5 steps, and some of these steps kind of breaking out into different pieces. So I'll tell you what I have. I have, oh, I don't know if you can see that because, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's interesting because of the, okay, we have attention. It's a linear model. It can be. I don't think it loops back, but we have but possibly. We'll see, Bernard. So we have attention and interest, right? We have attention and intention. Let's call it that. Uh, Attention and intention. The next is research and investigate. Uh, you know what? I would put attention and intention later. Let's hold off on that. Let's start with research and investigate. Okay. So we're going to start with research and investigate, then input, then process / connecting, then output. And I think that there are different there are different types of output, right? There are different types of processing. There are different types of input. And obviously there are different ways of researching. So while we might have these 4 parts, I think that I think we can break them down even into some subparts. So let's see here. Okay. Sounds like the learn, do, teach model. Yeah, that is kind of the learn, do, teach model, seek, sense, share. So good point, David. Milos, it's not really that it doesn't sound like a challenge. I mean, it could be, right? Like, I just think that, like, let me see actually if I can pull up a presentation. Yeah, I can here. I'm going to see if I can just show you my screen here really quick. So let's see. Am I going to want to do this? I'm going to pick a new scene for a second. All right. Yeah. Different camera angle. And I'm going to do this. There you go. All right. So you should see seek, sense, share. Right. So this is just, a PKM. Let me know if you guys can see that. A PKM kind of standard model, right? Continuous information from a network of peers and emails and stuff like that. Their own searching goes into here to seek. They process it in here, filter and validate, right? They synthesize and present in the share, and it goes email, Pinterest, YouTube, right? All these different components. So this is their model. This is a very famous PKM model. All right, now let's go back, and now let's see what people have to say, and then let's. All right. Missing implementation or use, it's fine to share info you've learned, but without your own experience, it's just regurgitation, is it not? Yeah, it is. And quite frankly, most of the time, it's only the impression of learning. It's not really even learning. But we'll get to that. Okay, Lisa. I like the 4 parts, and I think there is also the subconscious processing that seems to play a big role for me. Yes, as well for me, Lisa. So hopefully I don't forget that. Good. Thank you for letting me know that you could see that. And so let's continue on. So, see, what I think in that seek, sense, share model that's kind of completely absent, right, is understanding that while I don't know if this is true, what I'm about to say, but I believe it probably is. I think what determines how much you learn is dependent on your willingness to share, your willingness for output. The quality of what you learn is probably based on the quality of the input. So quantity or output is really going to determine what you learn at the end of the day. But you can only learn what you come up with and what you connect and or what you come across. And so, still, the quality of input is important. So I think most people spend way too much time on input, and I've noticed that I spend way too much time on input. And so I'm trying to determine, right, what the proper amount is. Now, I came across some other research, some Japanese research, believe it or not, that said that the golden ratio of, I'm just trying to pick it out here. The golden ratio is 3 to 7. 30% input, 70% output. Have no idea where they got that, but that was that's what I came across, right? But even that, really, the 3-7 ratio, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense, because let's start with the first part, which research investigate, which might not even be input. It might just be what guides your input. So what I started writing down as I was thinking about this morning, because this is what I decided I wanted to share with you guys, was, okay, so how do I come up with what it is that I'm going, the input, right? And I have a lot of things, right, that guide my input. So, for example, I do want to do more of thinking about my future self, who I want to be, and what that future me, who I want to be, what problems I want to tackle, and therefore what do I need to know? What do I need to know how to do, etc. So thinking more about my future self and my goals, I think would guide a lot more of my learning. But if I'm being honest with myself right now, I don't think it's guided it enough in the past. Skill trees. Okay, so a skill tree is kind of breaking down like the ability to do something into many smaller pieces. So if you've ever read like your business blueprint that I wrote, which breaks down the profit model into all the different steps, right? A skill tree is similar to that, right? That you'd be breaking up all the things you need to be able to do in order to have this skill, or all the things you need to learn in order to have this skill, right? So, you know, if you're going to be a world class in whatever it is that you do, what are all the elements that are required, and then what are the sub skills that make those that build up to that, right? So we could call it, what are the critical success factors of your business, right? And what are all the elements that kind of build into that? What I tend to do personally, and I do this a lot, is I look at the bibliographies of books that I really like. I read book lists, like, lists of all the books that Elon Musk has supposedly read, all the ones that Bill Gates has supposedly read, all the ones that Warren Buffett has supposedly read. And I look for books that everyone's read, like all of them. And so, like I read a book like a couple weeks ago by Peter Buffett, Warren Buffett's son, about, making life meaningful and successful. And that was on Bill Gates's list, Elon Musk's list, I believe, and also Warren Buffett's. And it was, well, obviously it's his son's book. But that was Peter Buffett who wrote that book. So I use book lists, I use bibliographies, and I also use friends and peers. And, a lot of people ask me if I read book summaries. If I read book summaries at all, and I do some, I'm primarily reading it to figure out whether I want to read the book or not, or, absorb whatever it is that I'm trying to absorb. So we have the research and investigate thing. I don't think a lot of people spend as much time as they probably should on this. I think that the majority of time is spent on the consumption side, but I believe that also spending more time on making sure that the stuff that you're consuming is the right stuff is very valuable. And I can, like I read lots of different types of books. So I remember like Tom Beale was in my office, and I just finished this book on propaganda. And this book on propaganda was written by Jacques Ellul. And it's a great book, but it's dense and it's academic. And so like Tom had asked me about this book, and I'm like, it's kind of funny. This is the kind of book like that probably like 5 years ago I couldn't have read. And nowadays, and this was like 10 years ago, but now I can. And, that's because I've increasingly challenged myself with more difficult things to read, right? Research papers, things like that, academic papers. primarily because the better the sources, the better the ideas. Okay, so we have this first thing, right? Research, investigate. Is there anything that I didn't say that is something that you do to figure out what you should study, what you should learn, that you think is a good thing that I'm not thinking of? So I have thinking about my future self and goals, doing skill trees, reading the bibliographies of books that were impactful, book lists, and friends and peers, and book summaries. Is there anything that I didn't say that you think should be a way of determining what information you should be inputting? Let me know. I'm going to see if there's anything here in the comments. David wants to know, what about the 80-20 ratio? Well, certainly you want to find the 20%, right, out there that gives you the 80%, not the 80% that gives you the 20%. And that, I believe, the challenge is that, like, if you're talking, David, about summaries, the reason I don't get a lot of value out of summaries is that they're too digested for me. I need more runway. I want to have more of a conversation with the author in my mind. And I find it not as easy to do unless it's someone really good summarizing or reading several summaries from several different people. What I try and do is expose the 20% and stuff that I'm reading that is worth the 80%. But good question. 80% input, 20% output in the initial phase, then the ratio flips for the next phase. Worked for me multiple times. Got it. Intention directs focused attention. Yes, totally does. And not only that, but the amount of attention, for those of you who know, well, for those of you who don't know, I wrote a report back in 2007. I wrote 2 reports back in 2007 called the Attention Age Doctrine 1 and 2. And in the first one, I talked about how attention was quickly going to become the scarcest commodity online and what entrepreneurs needed to do to maximize the return on their attention and to recognize that prospects are going to not be happy with their attention being wasted. So you have to give them a payoff for their attention. And how you as an entrepreneur get the highest return on your attention. And then the Attention Age Doctrine 2, I talked about how, this was, remember back in 2007, that people's attention was going to go to social media, and that's where you needed to be. So I've studied attention for a long time. And one of the things that is, that I don't know, I said this like 2 live streams ago, but I think it's really important, and I think it gets lost on a lot of people. The more that you pay attention, like the more focused you are when you're learning, the much greater the retention. When I first started to speed listen, because I started to speed listen before anything else, and I did that way before the internet, right? Like I took speed reading classes even before that, but I never did the speed reading. When I bought the variable speed, variable pitch cassette player from Radio Shack, that was when I started to speed listen. And what I found was that the faster I made it, the more I had to pay attention. That at regular speed, it was too easy for my mind to race around to other things. At 200%, I had to pay more careful attention. At 300%, I couldn't do anything else but pay attention. And when you are that focused, you retain more. So I've always tried to speed up things to the maximum that I could that would require my ADD brain to stay completely focused. It's the reason why I read on the elliptical. I'm reading on the elliptical, I'm reading really fast, and I'm also keeping my body totally like it's being used. And because of that, I know that I am so focused on it because time goes by so fast when I'm working out and reading, as opposed to even if I'm working out and watching a movie, it's slower. So you need to go at a speed where you're fully absorbed, right? It's, you can call that a flow state, you can call it hyper focus, whatever you want to call it, but you want, when you're doing anything related to learning, processing, and outputting, except for the creative side, you want to have your attention focused. And the more focused you are, the better you are, which means that you need to play with the input speed so that you don't have the ability for your mind to wander at the same time. The average person can understand about 700 words a minute, like in a conversation, but the average person only talks about 200 words a minute. Very easy for your brain to wander. It's one of the reasons why when I do most of my calls on Zoom, because it keeps me focused on the person, I have to look at them. Whereas if I don't have to look at them, I might start doing other stuff. And so when I'm learning, I'm trying to put myself in that same situation. Attention is incredibly important. I don't remember if it was the book The Talent Myth or The Talent Code, but one of the books talked about that, you could practice an hour a day versus 3 hours a day, and the person practicing an hour a day could actually get further faster than the person practicing 3 hours a day, because the person who's practicing an hour a day is focused and they believe that this is a skill that they're going to use in their future life, as opposed to someone who's studying 3 hours a day and doesn't think they're going to use it like as an adult, right? So the reason for that is that intention also helps our ability to retain. We actually develop more myelin around the synapses when we are intentional, and that makes the signals go through faster, which makes us learn faster, think faster, etc. So I want to stress that how important attention is. And you're totally right, David. All right, Andrew. I think learning is first input and then practicing doing is the key step. And then after that, you output. Practicing can be any length of time. It can vary on the complexity, but practice is the key, I think. Well, I think, Andrew, it depends on what we're talking about. If you're talking about a skill, for sure, right? Practice is incredibly important. But what about like learning other things, like learning to be strategic or understanding existentialism or designing a winning business? This is less about, there's a practice element in it, but it's more than that. It's more of a comprehension. It's a working through. It's a making new connections in your brain so that you can see things that others can't see, right? And like, the way I like to kind of talk about that is that imagine that we took let's see. Let's say we took Elon Musk and we put him in your body and he woke up as you tomorrow in your life. The question is that, like, in a year from now, would he be where you're going to be in a year from now? And odds are not, right? Odds are if he came into my life, not, right? That he sees things that others can't see because he knows things others don't know. And that's how he spots his opportunities. That's how he makes his decisions, right? We could do it with Richard Branson. We could do it with whoever your favorite entrepreneur is, right? Insert him into your life for a year in your body, your assets, your everything. And do you think that they would end up where you are in a year from now? And if not, then that's the kind of learning that we're talking about. How do we think like them? How do we see things the way they see things, think things the way they think things, and spot things the way they spot things, right? And that comes into some of the stuff that we've been talking about over these live streams as far as distinctions, as far as mental concepts, as far as boundaries, right? So, because distinctions allow you to see things that people can't see. So anyway, that's the research. You see, input, I'm taking one step in front of input because I think that there should be some discretion on what it is you decide to input. And so there has to be this like staging area of what you're going to learn, right? And it could be a stack of books, it could be, a stack of articles, magazines, whatever. But there's a staging area to let you know this stuff should be consumed and this stuff shouldn't, maybe, right? So that's the research and investigate stage. Let's kind of go back here, see where we're at. Whoa, this is a long one. So let me get rid of the strategic profits thing here for a second and we can read it. together. Learn is good if you can find where to get the best information from. If you can't spend a lot of time spinning your wheels and getting nothing done because of it, searching for the information is a bigger problem than learning it. Just like the topic below, try to find what cutting edge is in it. A little off topic, but just something I see coming in this. One of the big problems ahead of us is voice search, trying to get the best results in search with it. The ones that figure this out will jump ahead of the pack faster, and so will their growth of their business. Well, one of the problems with voice search is that you know you get no credit. So you get no credit for when they use your listing. Go into silence and see what arises. Interesting. I will sometimes look for ideas, inputs, in industries other than mine. Yeah, I mean, no doubt that's somewhere you get your best information. Finding the best process is driven by the intent. What's the intent for this work? That's a very valid point, Adi. Yes, I think testing what you consume is the course correction for me. I know that what works by testing what I'm learning in real time. Find smart people and listen very carefully to them. Okay, I try to read for contrarian ideas. For example, I read a book about discipline, then read one about intuition. Interesting. I remember you speed listening on the treadmill videos. Yes. Do you ever read in normal speed with a book in hand? I do sometimes. I'll get to that. Interesting. So you burn more calories on the elliptical because the focus is on reading and not the exhaustion? No, I don't get tired because I'm so focused. Time goes by a lot faster. And I don't have the desire to get up and walk around for 2 minutes and do a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't believe speed is necessary to reach attention. Isn't it a decision to focus? That's a good point, Bernard. I would tend to agree with you. I think that going faster is an easier way to kind of hold on to attention, but that someone who has a more practiced attention should certainly be able to go at any speed. And I like to go at a speed that I'm forced to pay attention, as opposed to making myself pay attention at any speed. But I think you're right, Bernard. I think that's valid. You're increasing the challenge when you speed up, so your brain switches on. I can accomplish similar thing with a 35 to 45 minute timer. Yeah, that's called the Pomodoro technique, and that's a very like I like to sprint. Elon works from first principles. Yes, I know that. This gets back to the power of your why and the time urgency involved. If I need to learn something immediately that I need to use today to achieve a goal that's important to me tomorrow, my focus and attention are different than if I'm just learning to learn or because I find something interesting. Yeah, I get that. But what if you could learn with that same intensity is the question. Question, Rich, do you feel that walking or running helps you keep your mind occupied while you focus? I know there are others using treadmills and stand-up desks to have work. Do you think that helps people with ADD? I like standing. I'm on a standing desk right now, and I've had a standing desk for like over 10 years. For me, it's just more, I'm afraid to be fat. And so I want to work out for that reason. I like to read, so I started reading on the elliptical. And then what I found is that I could read faster, read more, and absorb more on the elliptical than any place else. All right. Would you use a mind map to build a skill tree? Yeah, I see them very similar, Richard. So I think you certainly could. All right. So I guess that from the research and investigate stage, we have this list, right? This is what I've got so far. So the next, right, is input. And, I'm curious what you guys think, because like, I'm thinking right now that input is really about when for those of you who remember my process, right? Like I will read a book in an hour and a half, 2 hours, right, on the elliptical. I will go through that at about 700 words a minute. Based on that reading, I'll decide whether it's worthwhile reading again. If it's worthwhile reading again, I'll read somewhere around that same speed, maybe a little bit faster, but this time I'm highlighting. And then I take those highlights, I put them into Evernote. And then I do that progressive summarization that I was telling you guys about, that I've showed you, where the first time I go through those notes, I bold, important parts. The next time I go through those notes, I'll look at only the things that are bolded and I'll highlight what's most important of that. And then the next time I will consolidate, take everything that has been highlighted, move it up to the top, like copy and paste. And now I have this little outline and I will write about it. And so that's kind of the process, right? So what I was thinking though is like, when is it processing for me, right? When is it processing? When is it inputting? So I would say that it's inputting until I get it into Evernote. So reading on the elliptical, inputting. Reading off the elliptical, highlighting, input. Listening to podcasts, if I'm paying attention, input. Reading and bolding in Evernote, though, I think that's input. The bolding the first time through. I'm not sure. That's the one I wonder. I'm not sure. I think that's processing. Emails is input, right? Going to my Feedly is input. Any kind of consumption really is input, and that's kind of maybe the meta, the higher level kind of conversation that we have all grown in, myself included, I think, grown into much more consumers than creators. And yet it's the creators that we respect and admire in life, not necessarily the consumers. And whether it's food, information, entertainment, whatever, we're much more likely to be consumers than creators. And yet the things I'm most proud of, the things I lose myself in, the things that I get the most pleasure out of mostly are things I create. And so for me, the input is consumption, right? And at the end of the day, it can feel. There's a quote by Albert Einstein that said someone can read too much, right? And I've also heard Tim Ferriss talk about that some people read so they don't have to think for themselves. And while I'm a huge reader, I also tend to agree with those thoughts that it is too easy to just read book after book after book thinking that you're learning something, right? And, if you've ever been like a self-help book junkie, then you know how ridiculous that is, especially if you're not doing the exercises in the book. You're just like skimming the surface of one to the next, which is really just a way to keep yourself occupied, kind of keep the dream alive, but you're not really doing anything. And so do you guys think I left out any of the inputs? And if so, what are they? And do you have I'm curious just what comes up for you guys, like as you think about input as consumption, because at the end of the day, your business is not built by consumption, it's built by effort, right? Your almost nothing in your life other than what you can pull from, right? Is really that much based on your consumption. And so consuming something and not processing it is a waste of time, right? Reading a book that was important that you did not remember is a waste of time. Would you agree or disagree? I'll wait for your answers. Um, I don't think that's a tough question, is it? Did I scare all you guys away? All right. How about this? Tell me what's your preferred input channel. Okay, cool. So Paul agrees, Ulrich agrees, Mina agrees, Susie agrees, Arnold agrees. Okay. Is there any is there any input that you do that I didn't put on here, like watching video? I mean, I think I watch videos, YouTube videos, etc. Okay, lots more agrees. Cool. 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 Oh, this is interesting. Sandy, what do you mean? Disagree. Reading for pleasure is different than reading for learning. See, I enjoy all reading, even complicated reading versus easy reading. I don't read that much fiction. I probably should read more. But I enjoy all reading. In fact, I have to be careful because I can oftentimes avoid responsibility by reading. Like, instead of doing the next thing that needs to be done, go read another book. But maybe you see it differently, Sandy, and I'd love to kind of hear your opinion. Uh, yep, for sure, resourcefulness is more important than resources. Um, Audiobooks, MP3s. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I don't. I'm not as good with audiobooks. I have to go through them super fast for them to keep my attention, but I know a lot of other people who do too. Good point. Make a note of that. Um, Audiobooks. Um, Ulrich prefers books, more dense and concise information versus video. Yeah, myself too. I'd rather read a transcript than an audio or a video. Uh, Interviews from smart people, audiobooks, EPUBs, coaching. Side question: do you do other exercises like weights apart from the elliptical trainer? Not very much. No, I'm naturally muscular for some strange reason. Uh, Susie Nelson says her favorite is podcasts. You should definitely check out. Remind me, Susie. I got a link for you that I think you'd love. I agree. I prefer reading, but now making time for videos. Reading for learning, I take notes. For pleasure, no notes unless I run into something that really connects. Got ya. Well, one thing that I would say, Sandy, is that what probably the most important. I was looking for the article this morning and I couldn't find it, which really bums me out. But I read it years ago, before I built like my knowledge system, and it's something that I definitely need to do. And I've been avoiding it. And as I was working on this, I was reminded of it. Um, if you were to take 3 minutes after every conversation, after every time you like opened up a book or watched something, and wrote out a quick summary of what you just learned, um, supposedly, and it makes sense from everything I've ever read, that would increase your learning tremendously. And one of the things that they teach you in speed reading is like read a page, close your eyes, summarize what that page was about. Okay, now do 2 pages, 3 pages, so that you get the ability to quickly summarize in your mind. I know I could be better on that, but that's an interesting way of kind of distinguishing it. Jeremy, great point, Rich. I think having the future self in mind when we're inputting is important. That exercise has helped. Cool. Trying to figure out just how to say this so you understand the problem. Finding the input you want to keep is part of the problem. I find myself going through stuff that's just a rehash of other stuff and reading endlessly the same stuff just to find what I'm looking for. How do you scan through and find the best information? What's the best way you found? Well, can you give me an example, Don, of what you're looking for? Like, so we can kind of like break that concept apart a little bit. Some people read, watch, or listen. I guess everybody learns differently. Videos and podcasts. What about video courses like Udemy and online learning platforms? Yeah, I know that for me, that believe it or not, I find reading is the one I enjoy the most. Online programs, Udemy, that kind of stuff. Um, have you ever read Make It Stick? No, I haven't. Should I read that book, um, Stefan? Let me know if I should read Make It Stick by Peter Brown. Let me know. You may have covered this. What if the book makes you see and think differently and shift something? Not necessarily taking notes, although all my books have words with page numbers on back and front covers for later referral. Yeah, Denise. I mean, well, the whole purpose, right? Like, one of my big purposes of reading is to have like that shift, that insight. A lot of times that comes from reading, but a lot of times that will come from making connections later. Um, and there are a lot of books about that eureka moment. That's actually one of the names of the books. Another one is Seeing What Others Don't, by something Klein, Gary Klein, I think, who's written a lot about intuition from a very like scientific standpoint. Um, yeah, in fact, it's those epiphanies that for me is what learning's all about. And causing epiphanies in others is something that I strive for when I'm writing a report or something like that. But totally, like that's the goal, right? The goal is when you're exposed to something to shift your thinking so that there was like before you were exposed to this, after you were exposed to this. Uh, 3 minute summary, great idea. It's a real bummer when you can't find something you read. I started using Notion the other day as my second brain for that reason. Very cool, Milos. Keep me posted on how Notion is. We'll have like a compare and contrast between Notion and Evernote. I think if Notion had easier ways of inputting from other things, I would use that. But because I really like the way you can design your home screens and stuff on Notion. I love reading books. So do I, Andrew. I'm an anal note taker. It's like I have to bring it through my ears and flow through my hand to my notes. I rarely look back at my notes. I do put big stars on my takeaways while taking notes. That's interesting, Susie. So you're doing all the hard work, but you don't spend the time going through your notes. The question is if you ever were to go through your notes and start connecting your notes, um, you might like, you might, you might make a lot new connections and might have a lot of epiphanies. Uh, oh, it's about how to actually remember what you read. Cool, very cool. I will. I might even have it read by the time Thursday rolls around. When reading, I mark up areas with lines. More important, go back after. Okay. Hey, Luis. Sometimes I watch several short video summaries of a book at high speeds, not to acquire knowledge, but to get a general idea about a lot of books. And after I've selected the book that are relevant based on what I'm working on, then I decide the ideal order in which I want to read those books. I think timing and sequencing of what you learn is very important for retention and engagement. Totally agree, Lewis. And I didn't get a chance to go into that, but yeah, for sure. Having a general idea of the topic so that you know where things fit is incredibly important. Incredibly important. And so, yeah, I will often skim a book really quickly to kind of get a sense of it. I might go and read a quick book summary on it. But I definitely don't open the book without like no idea of where it's going. I want to know where it's going, for sure. So I want to still get back to this. So hold on a second. Um, so like, let's see. So right now, right, like what I'm doing, and I'm going to go back to this other mode for a second here. All right. Let's get rid of the join our Facebook group. If you haven't, you should. Okay. So this was that article that I came across this morning. Let's see. Can I go like this? No. Okay. So I want to show you kind of what I do here. And I think some of you have already seen this. I'm just looking for, okay, let's see. So this is a note, right? This has already gone through 4 different stages, right? So let me kind of, you know what, before I do that, you guys can see this, right? Let me know. I'm going to move this a little bit this way. Okay. So when notes come in, generally I do a lot of my reading in Evernote. I'll either delete the note, like the article, if I don't think it's worthwhile after it gets into Evernote, but generally I don't read on my browser. I save it to Evernote and then I'll read it in Evernote, just like I'll forward any good emails also to Evernote. And so when the first time I go through something, right, let's see, like, what's this? Okay, so this is True Believer by Eric Hoffer, a book I read a long time ago, but I've never put it into Evernote. So I took everything that all the things I highlighted from True Believer, and I put it into Evernote. Now, everything that's highlighted here is actually stuff, not highlighted, bolded, is stuff that I will look at again, and then I will go through it and highlight what is most important in the bold. Now, this is what I learned from Tiago, right? So that's the first stage, right? This is the second stage where now I look at what's bolded. See, like this whole paragraph's bolded, but I'm only highlighting this, right? Or highlighting that, right? So now I'm highlighting what I feel is most important in the bold. Then I will actually consolidate what I put in highlight and bold, right? So that's up here. So here's one of the things on future self, right? Um, and so this is kind of what I went through, and these are my notes. Does this all make sense? What I'm showing you guys? Here's so this is just stuff I'm working on over here, which I don't know if you can see because maybe my picture is in the way. Put it over here. Um, cool. I'm very glad I'm all right. And then here are projects. So I'm doing a project right now on how I learn, right? And so all of these different notes are in different stages, right? What it means to focus on your future self. This is the one we were just going over, right? And let me just see if there's another SP4 in here. Here's another one. Define the problem is most important. Defining problem and developing solution is a loop. Be T-shaped, right? So these are the main ideas I got from this. Then what I'll do is I'll actually create a table of contents of a bunch of notes on one topic. So I'm consolidating from there. But hopefully that makes sense. So now let me go back to regular here. All right. So let's see. And then we'll go to the next stage here. All right. Political policies affect my business, so any government changes can have consequences. I don't watch, read, or listen to news very often, but sometimes the odd social media post gets through, and my subconscious always seems to highlight important or relevant news. Interesting, David. Huh. Wonder what you do. Yeah, I go back and forth. Right now, I'm not watching any news. I just can't. I don't know who to trust. Any ideas on how to catalog and use past notes from past reading and what to look for to connect the dots? Well, hopefully I just answered that. That's why I was showing you what I do. Mike, I have my clients learn, read video, audio, take an idea, implement, come back to the material, and increase their ability to learn at a higher level. It's magic when they do that. Yeah, I agree, Mike. Totally. How do you find where a book is going? And even deeper, where your idea is going, not only in monetary sense or impact, but also, say, in relationships and other areas of life? That's a diagramming skill, which I certainly have no problem talking about. I don't know that today's the best day. But, like, if you look at the manifesto, if you look at the missing chapter, you'll see lots of diagrams. The entrepreneurial emergency, the final chapter. I like to think visually. So I use visuals a lot. Drawing, even though I'm a horrible artist, drawing and kind of connecting dots for myself. I just went through building a second brain in the last cohort, complete game changer for PKM. Totally. I am a huge fan of Tiago. Do you use a handheld tray scanner to capture text? No. I take pictures of stuff I've written, and I do have a scanner. But nowadays I read on my iPad, so it all is automatic. So you keep all the versions in the progressive summarization? Yes, Milos, and I think that's very important. I think it's very important to keep the context in the note, right? Like every note, and this is something I think I learned from Tiago as well. Every note is a balance between compression and context. Every map is also right. There's a trade-off between how much detail and is it useful, right? And so what I want to do is leave a note for my future self of what I think is most important, so that my future self can use system one thinking, right? Thinking fast and slow. System one thinking to find what is most important for my future self. I'm going to use system two thinking to leave those signposts for my future self. And also, because I leave everything in there, Milos, when I'm doing a search in Evernote, it's much more likely that I will find whatever it is I'm looking for because I've left the whole piece in there. And because I've left the whole piece in there, the likelihood of it coming up in a search when I'm searching for some topical thing, it will come up. And not only that, but as artificial intelligence tools get better, I believe at some point having both might be very beneficial for a lot of reasons that right now my imagination would just be more scary than truthful. But hopefully that helps. Let me know, Milos, if it does, but I definitely do. Bold, highlight, repurpose content. Yep. Bold, highlight, connect, and then reword, push out. How important would you say daily consistent learning is for staying relevant in business? If yes, how much time do you spend daily reading or studying? Or is it more to create daily and then study more time to time weekly? Well, I think it depends. I think it's different for each person, Stefan. I think that, it depends on the field you're in. Obviously, some fields are changing at a very rapid clip. Other ones change more slowly. I'd also say, where's the logo? There it is. Might as well, for people who don't know me. The So definitely that. But when you look at most of the leaders and entrepreneurs at the top of their game, it seems to be an ongoing and consistent thing. So I would say that it's a daily practice, I think. But what I would also say is that there will be times when it's not a daily practice. If you're an entrepreneur and, there are going to be times when it's an all out sprint and you definitely wouldn't be potentially doing it then. But what I would say is also understand that it's not the person that knows the most that wins. And I really like, it's not about being like it's not about having the most amount of knowledge like packed into your head. One of the best, it's, I know we jump around a lot and I apologize for that. These live streams are, as I go on, I believe they'll be more organized and I'll get clearer about how to think publicly out loud, kind of. But we retain very little of what we read, and there are a lot of different strategies and formulas to retain more. But one of the things that is best for long-term memory is almost forgetting and then pulling it back into memory, right? And there's something called Anki, which is a piece of software that's based on, I forget the scientist's name, of spaced repetition and when things need to be recalled to lock them in. But it's not just about locking in a ton of stuff into your head. And I think that if that's the long-term goal, I also think that might be a mistake. I think that distinctions, the ability to see opportunities where others don't, the ability to notice for things that others don't, so that you can do things that others would never think of and others don't, like that really is a part of expertise that is not necessarily related to just learning, and remembering. Another thing that really helps with memory is connections, because everything is connected in your brain. That's why metaphors, similes, analogies are so powerful, because it's using a connection you already have in your brain to connect something else to. So when you're reading or learning or watching or listening, the first thing to think about is, what is this similar to? And how is it related to stuff like that, so that you can kind of put that wedge in your brain. But it really is the distinctions that I believe is probably most important, and the ability to connect new thoughts and come up with principles or theories to follow, or workflows or formats. And so I think, at least for me, that's where getting clear about what my purpose is, who do I want to be, thinking about my future self becomes really important, because that's what I aspire to. And for each person it's different, right? But I think that I don't want to be a trivia whiz, but what I do want to do is notice things that other people don't in areas that make a difference. I don't know. I haven't given that enough thought, but that's kind of what I'm thinking at. Stefan, but tell me what your thought is on that. Rich, do you have a hypnosis book that you could recommend that helps with understanding focus? You know what? Let me, Arnold, if you don't mind, ask me that on Thursday. But why a hypnosis book on focus as opposed to a regular book on focus? Or do you want to use hypnosis for focus? I will take a look, though, Arnold, and get you an answer. I like that you do a table of contents in the related topics. Yeah, let me show you. I'll show you one of those real quick, too. Let me see if I can find one real quick. Go back here for a second. I think I have a few in here. Okay, so these are all articles on breaking up big tech and the damage that big tech does. And then these are everything that I highlighted from those. So there's like 60 different articles, and these. So this would be like um, when I was working on the CSIB stuff, right? Because I'm really concerned about big tech and walled gardens. And this is how kind of big tech treats walled gardens. And the so yeah, so this is now this is just something like if I ever am going to work on big tech stuff, I already have this and I can do a search. And if I click on they are hurting the producers, it'll take me to that, right? That short little note, right? Take me back to table of contents, big four tech companies, Wikipedia, right? So that's kind of, and I want to, like in the past, the way I would write reports and stuff like that, I would do all the same amount of work, but I'd put it all on index cards. And then I'd have all these shoe boxes, which I still do. And maybe at some point I'll get these shoe boxes into Evernote. But that's now a relic for my future self. And think about having that for everything that you've done, how easy it would be to produce the next thing. So, and table of contents, Evernote does that automatically. Um, where do I go to learn Evernote? Evernote has their own basic training, and it's a free app. Please talk one day about diagramming. Sure thing. It'd be my pleasure. Let me just see if I have here visual. I think I have it in here. Visual organizer. I think so. Yeah. Let's see. All right. I know I have it in Thinking Tools. That's a map. No. Yeah. So I will find a different. I'll find the real one. But here's Richard. Here are some diagrams, right? I'm gonna see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so these are called inference notes. Means imply, like the subject says and does this, but means this. These are all just different outline for writing, main idea, main idea, main idea, the overall topic. Here's an event map, like something happened, when did it happen, what happened, where did it happen, right? What happens. So these are just all different concept maps, right? And let's see if I have any other in thinking tools. I hope is this helpful for you guys? Showing you all this stuff? I hope it is. Here's coaching questions. All right. Thinking. Yeah, here's some other thinking tools, right? Different kinds of knowing trees, right? Anytime I see a good visual tool, I will pull it out, right? And just take a copy of it, put it in my notes, creating a storyboard, crafting a storyboard, right? I know I have visual organizer somewhere here, but anyway, let me know if that's helpful. All right, so type 1, type 2, distinctions really hit my aha moment button. Cool, cool. Yeah, there's so much to, right? That concept of, what's his name? Kahneman. And most people don't apply anywhere near as enough. We want our customers to be in system one rather. We know that that's lazier thinking. Buying is generally that type of thinking, emotionally based, impulsive. And yet, the type of learning that I'm talking about generally happens in system two. I reread favorite books over the years with different color highlighters because I see things that I missed years before. Since our brains delete what's not relevant or congruent to how we think at the time, I hesitate creating notes from books from a possible limited point of view. I was using Evernote and taking pictures of pages. Interesting. Yeah, there's no doubt that like you read something like Plato or well, it could be any kind of book really, but at least some more heavy duty ones. You certainly come away with different things reading them at different times in your life. And we all are evidence collectors, for sure. We do not see reality. We see the reality that supports our worldview. And, but that's another reason why I keep everything I highlight, and I tend to over highlight, which causes a lot more work for myself. But I hear you, Denise. And there are some books that I will review, but I don't do that often enough. I'm a Super Memo user. Oh, I know Super Memo. That's like, John, you're one of the you're like an OG. Like that's been around forever. How long have you been using that, John? That's another review software. When I hit the golf ball in the sweet spot, it's usually when I forget the 101 technical things to remember and just swing. Yep. Well, that's system one, right? But what gets you there is practice. Thank you. Thanks, Rich. I'm using Evernote now. Cool. Really like that picture of you, David. You look pretty badass in that picture. Good photo. I agree that ability to apply information and create connections, context in which the information fits is more important than becoming a quiz master. The ability to do that depends on intelligence, openness, environment as well. Yes, very much so. In fact, I think it's, what was I listening to the other night? It definitely matters quite a bit on openness and quite a bit on environment. And it's this desire to simplify. Like the connection side is relatively easy for me, probably because I have ADD, so I see connections even when they don't exist. But simplifying is not as easy for me from a standpoint when I look at someone who does an amazing job, who's really good at simplifying. And but like I've told this story countless times, but we're in a day and age, right, where it's ideas that have value, and the right idea, just one idea, can make a huge difference in your life. And like for me, right, like the distinction between an opportunity seeker and a strategic entrepreneur has probably made me somewhere between 20 and $40 million in my life. And that was something that I heard someone say. So I was listening to a teleseminar that Jay Abraham was doing for his strategy summit. And he had a business coach, gentleman I'm friendly with, who I have a lot of respect for, Paul Lemberg. This is, I think, in like 2006 or 7. And Jay made this distinction between strategy versus tactics. And Paul corrected him and said, it's really more a distinction between strategy and opportunism. And when I heard that, like that immediately like clicked in my head. I was like, that's it. And that was like the line, that was really the point where that idea started to take hold for me. Paul knew it, but couldn't appreciate its power based on everything I was reading and studying and knew about the market, I could. So part of it is like being able to connect new ideas, and part of it is being able to appreciate when an idea has oomph, right? Like the other idea I like to share a lot of times are two different ones that I've liked that both times also kind of hit me, and but related maybe more to my own issues. That perfectionism is trying to get the world to believe something about yourself that you don't believe about yourself. Um, that also it has this like for me when I came across that sentence, I was like, whoa, that's powerful, right? Or a Wayne Dyer statement where he said, no amount of self help will ever lead to self acceptance. You don't get there from here. Like, that's not the path. Um, so, being able to recognize powerful ideas um, also very valuable, maybe even more valuable than coming up with them because there seem to be so many, and it truly is a skill, and it's partly the same. So, all right, so let's keep going here. Um, Ulrich, yes, very helpful. Great thinking tools, bro. This should be a book by Rich. I'm going to write a book one of these days. Very helpful. I know I need to be more intentional on scheduling thinking time with the right tools and the right environment. Super memo. It's the best. Um, John, maybe we'll have to talk one of these days. Many years I run a Discord channel for it with hundreds of users. It was hard to get support for it before. Oh, does that mean you get support for it now? I haven't looked at Super Memo in like a long time, but I remember when I was first interested in learning a long time ago. I looked at it. I'm so fortunate to have stumbled upon this. I need this in my life. Thank you. You're welcome, Alicia. Thanks for sharing your stuff on Evernote. I opened my account inspired in the material you share. Cool. Uh, Anki is another great app for space. Yeah, that's the one I was talking about, Anki. But Super Memo was like the first one, I think, and like created by the guy that like kind of. I just remember Super Memo being around for a long time. Sorry if I'm overstepping. You're never overstepping, Cheryl. But can you please expand on how to find out what books and ideas lead to? If not today, on another call. And if not, can you please point me out to resources that would help me understand this concept? Yeah, no problem, Cheryl, but I'm not sure I understand what you mean by lead to. So, can you tell me what you mean? Do you mean like from a standpoint of what's next? Do you mean like after you read a book, what you do? Like, it's just explain to me a little bit better what you mean, or if anyone else can figure out what she means. Um, so, yeah, I want to help you, Cheryl, and you're never overstepping. But I don't know what you mean by what books and ideas lead to. Yeah. Happy to connect and talk super memo. We'll have to do that, John. Uh, direct message me in Facebook. I don't look there that often, but I'll pull you out and then we'll talk. Anki uses the very old super member algo. Yeah, that I knew. All right, cool. So all right, so we talked about. So for me, I think that inputting is really just getting it into Evernote. That's really the input stage. And then I think that actually processing and output, some people will kind of have that as one. Other people will maybe have them separate. Um, you know, whether it's uh, output or whether it's implementation or execution, right? Like it just depends on, if you're reading something to do something, then it's execution or implementation, right? If you're reading something because you're doing research to write something, then that's more output. So I I spend a lot of time inputting, a mediocre amount of time processing, and the least amount of time on output. And I think that's a big mistake. And I think I have it all wrong. I think I need to do less input. I need to do more output and more processing. And how I'm going to go about doing that, I'm not sure yet. But what I can tell you is that these live streams for me are part of that equation of output, right? Or at least processing. So, you know, I didn't do it today. and I'm trying to figure out. So maybe if any of you guys have any resources you can recommend to me, I'd be very interested in it. What I heard, what I'm hoping to do from these live streams, besides connecting with people, besides helping people, besides sharing what I'm learning and things like that, um, is to use this, the live stream time, as processing time so that I actually, when I launch my podcast, which I'm going to launch pretty soon, which will be interviews with a lot of the people whose books I read, who people I admire. And what I want to do is I want to kind of bring together this time, these live streams, for me to process the ideas that then on the podcast, I'll actually be talking to the expert, and you'll have the backstory and maybe even some story after that where we process what that expert had to share. Um, but I heard Jordan Peterson talk about how he gives presentations and how each time they're totally different. And what he does is he picks a problem, and then he thinks about like 10 or 12 stories, and then he goes up and he just goes into trying to break apart that problem, trying to figure out that solution. And I think that there's no way that I can do 2 prepared presentations a week, nor do I want to. That's not really the goal. And I think they would get boring pretty fast because I'd be recycling stuff. What I want to do is I want to bring stuff that I come across here with you, and I want to break it apart with you as it relates to learning more, knowing more, growing our businesses, being more successful, etc. Right? And so that this kind of allows me a place to do more processing. Now, after this, after I upload this to YouTube and it's in the Facebook platform, I get the transcript of it. And maybe from here, then I can take this material and edit it down, start tightening it, potentially make shorter videos when I really felt like I nailed something. But what I want this time to be is more open and kind of exploratory. And so I'm not sure necessarily how best to do that work, right? I believe that when I find my place where I'm going to be doing this, I'll still be doing them on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm definitely going to want a whiteboard behind me so that we can pull stuff up on the whiteboard. Definitely have a better computer set up so I can actually pull notes up, like know in advance, so I'm not struggling and stuff. But I'm not sure what the best way is to kind of think through a problem in public. And maybe one of you guys have read a book about something like that or have come across something like that. When I heard Jordan Peterson talk about it, I was like, wow, if I could do that, that would make this time really valuable for you guys, for me, and for what comes of it. So that's my thinking on it. All right. Can you expand your thoughts to finding a sweeter spot and leading to the path to things you don't know and getting more opportunity? Well, yeah, I think I can, Arnold. Tell me how this lands. There's like there are things you know, right? There are things you know you don't know, and then there are things you don't know that you don't know. And for most of us, what we don't know is much bigger than what we know or what we know that we don't know. And many of there's a concept called subject object. And I'm not going to do it justice because I haven't reviewed this in a really long time, although it's something I plan on reviewing sometime soon. And it's a part of educational development that we are subject to things until they become an object. So we like projection, right? From a psychological standpoint, projection, where I'm projecting upon you certain feelings I have, right? So there's something that says if it affects you, AFFECT, if something someone says affects you, it's projection. If what they say informs you, it's not. Until you understand that completely, You are subject to projection. As soon as you learn that and understand it and can see it as an object, oh, that's projection. You are no longer subject to it. It's now an object. If you wake up and you identify that you're cranky, right? You have a choice now of being subject to it or not. If you don't identify yourself as being cranky, you are subject to it. So when we identify something, we have the choice now of whether we're going to be subjected to it in the future or whether now it's an object that, we've created a boundary around it. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not giving it the explanation it deserves because, like, I haven't reviewed this in over a decade. But so there are all these things that are out there that we don't see because we have no appreciation for it. We don't even know what to look for. We don't know what the hints are. And we are evidence collectors. So we look at everything that just confirms our beliefs, right? For the longest time, I would always try and find the opposite opinion of what I agree with. But the world has become so bifurcated now, it doesn't even make sense. So the issue, though, is looking at mental maps and distinctions and then trying to apply that in as many places as possible. So the concept of addition by subtraction, right? That if you want to become a president of your company and you work there, instead of thinking of all the tasks you could do to get the promotion, think of all the things that you definitely should not do that would interfere with you getting a promotion and even have you fired, and first eliminate those things, right? And that's addition by subtraction. And many things in life we can go further by subtracting, not adding. But then the idea is to take a concept like that, and what I'm about to say, I don't feel like I have it figured out. So I'm just off the top of my head right now. Is kind of see where does that break down? Where does that apply 100%? Where does it not? And it goes back to what I was sharing a couple of live streams ago, that for 10 years plus, I have had a rule that said it doesn't matter whether I feel like working out or not, I'm going to get on the elliptical for 5 minutes. And then if I want to get off, I can get off, but I can't really know whether I want to or not until I'm on for 5 minutes. I've had the experience of God knows how many times writing in my journal where I felt like I had nothing to write about, and then I'd start, and then all of a sudden, some of my longest entries. And yet, even with those points of evidence, it never occurred to me that when I don't feel like writing, just regular writing, I should go for 5 minutes and then decide, even though I have all these other experiences. And it wasn't until I was talking to Katrina Ruth when she mentioned that I was like, geez, I do that in other areas, but I've never thought about it for my writing. And that's kind of as an example, as a template, that might be a much more important rule for me in many areas. That my initial feeling means nothing compared to my feelings after doing it for 5 minutes. And maybe that should be a global rule for me, right? But the fact that I had it in one area, it was showing itself in another area, and it never occurred to me in a third area, means that I need some more thinking about these mental maps, these concepts, these distinctions, taking them and really processing them through in all areas of my life to see when you find a power law or when you find a rule that's powerful, where does it not work, as opposed to just assuming that it worked in the one place you found it, right? And so for me, processing and connecting is a lot about that. It's about this, for example, the right ratio of input to output. Is there a perfect ratio? Well, according to what I read, 3:7, right? I don't know if I believe that. But what I do believe is that there probably is a perfect ratio for me of how much input, how much processing, how much output. And I would imagine that of the three, probably input should be the least. It's the most fun for me. It's easy for me. I can process a lot of information fast. but it's the connecting and it's the output that makes it much more valuable. It's what internalizes it, and it's what translates it into value. And so that's where I believe I have to spend a lot more time. I hope that makes sense. And Arnold, if that isn't where you were headed, then by all means, let me know. Okay, you could also use OneNote for the second brain. A little more clunky, but it's an alternative. Clunky because it's hard to export what you do on your computer to the phone. Yeah, and the most important thing, Andrew, with note taking, from my perspective at least, is the ability to take notes fast, quickly, anytime, anywhere, for any reason. And if you can't, then you're not going to get like there's got to be no friction. There's new software, Tango, that incorporates diagramming better than Evernote. Where did I put that note? Name, help me, anyone. Are you talking about Rome? But they don't diagram. But John, definitely interested in that. Thanks, Rich. I mean, what by reading this book will this lead to in the future? And by pursuing this idea rather than that, it will lead to this future maybe. Maybe like say you have goals in the future and you want what you do now to lead to those goals. How do you know what to do now for that goal? What ideas to pursue or career path to take? Gotcha. Okay, Cheryl. I imagine I'm missing something. I understand what you said, but I imagine I might be missing something still. So, but I might not. So, and we could certainly do this because I was thinking about showing you guys some of the like theory of constraints tools that I use and things like that. But wouldn't it start with an understanding of like where you want to be, right? Like the business you want to create, the job you want to have, whatever it is, defined in as much detail as you have at this moment. And then kind of comparing yourself with that and noticing what's different and then noticing what's missing, putting them in sequential order. Like in order to have this, I must have that, this, that, until you have them in sequence, and then you kind of have a plan. There's a lot more depth to what I'm saying, but would that work? And if it would, I can certainly. It's part of like a process I use in BGS that I want to update anyway. So I certainly don't mind walking people through the old process that I've taught for a long time. But yeah, Cheryl, we can do that if that's what you mean. Let me know. I've partnered with my son, so he kills 80% of my ideas and implements 20%, and it's been a game changer. And we're running through doors every day. Sounds awesome, David. Pink sheets would be really useful. Yes. So you're gonna. All right, Milos, do you know Matt? I've never spoken to Matt. I've read his book. I've watched some of his videos. I'm a fan of his work, and I would love to talk to him. I don't know if you know him or you're just a fan. Let me know, Milos. He's someone I haven't reached out to, but someone I probably should for thinking through ideas. I don't know. So yeah, just to see here. So yeah, so Milos is talking about a gentleman, Matt Church, who wrote a book called Think. Well, he's done more than that. And he has a model for thinkers, for thought leaders. I'm looking for the book notes. Let's see, is that it? Yeah, so here, here, Milos. Here's, I just put this in, Matt Church, book note, think, using pink sheets to capture your ideas. So, like, I'm in the bolding stage right now, as you can see, but there's so much that I really enjoyed here. So a lot of it is bolded. But yeah, definitely going through Matt Church's stuff is something that I think would be helpful for me. Develop a better IP process for sure. So Milos, have you gone through his stuff other than read his book? Do you know him? Like, give me the lowdown. Wow, powerful with all the interesting discussions these days. Cool. Rich, figuring the best education for my kids, I begin reading about liberal arts, particularly The approach called the trivium. I know the trivium. It seems relates with the stuff you were sharing. Trivium is grammar, logic, rhetoric. It matches input, processing, and output viewpoints you were sharing. Thanks. Yeah, I know the trivium. Actually, I have a book called The Trivium, I think. Let's see. Go back to that in a second. Yeah, where is that? Well, I have it on my iPad, I guess. All right, let's see. But yes, definitely rhetoric. Rhetoric is incredibly valuable. In fact, I was talking to Sean Vossler. Is that his name? The I think that's his name. The copywriter, and he recommended this book, Crack the Essay, and it's all about rhetoric. And so I bought it. They didn't have a digital copy, unfortunately. Thank you, Milos. I'll check out Pink Sheets. Yes. Can I direct message you for further clarification? Sure. Well, yeah, sure. You can do that. Or you know what? Just put it up, Cheryl. Put it on the put it up in the Facebook group. Do a post, and I'll answer it in there. But I've been a fan of his work for some time, and it's improved my process tremendously. Okay. Let's see. Milos, you have any knowledge of how I can get in touch with the guy? Does he even have a? I mean, it's been a long time since I've like tried to track him down. These talks are so enjoyable. I should get on more of them. Yes, you should, Cheryl. Getting in late. Are you in Notion now, Rich? No, I'm still using Evernote. I like Notion and I like Rome and I also like Devon Think. I like all of the different things, but I think for me, ease is so important. I need to be able to access it on everything. And what bothers me a lot is how it it's not as easy to bold and highlight as I would like in Evernote. I would love to have an app that would allow me to pull a note out of Evernote, be able to just use my Apple Pencil to bold or Apple Pencil to highlight, and then have it go back in. Because when I read something like in Goodreader, that's a PDF, I can highlight or bold it really fast. So that's the only bummer. But okay, so let's kind of go backwards for a second. We talked about attention, right? We talked about how important attention is because the more focused you are on any kind of learning, the more retention you're going to have. We talked about how there must be some kind of research or investigation like component before the workflow of learning even starts. Like, what is it that is worth your time reading, watching, listening to? Then once you've kind of culled that list down, right? Like input, how do you get that information in here, right? I like to input at high speeds. I find it keeps my attention very focused. I forget who said it, but someone said, you can control your attention if you're going slower, and you certainly could. I like to use speed to pull my attention forward and force me to pay attention. And it's probably an ADD thing. It makes it actually easier for me to hyper focus that way. Then, like, after you have brought it in, if you think the job is over, you are very wrong. In fact, I'm thinking that's like 1/3 of the job. The next third is processing it, making connections to things, reviewing things like Anki or Super Memo, but doing something with what it is that you just consumed, whether it's reflecting on it, taking 3 minutes and summarizing it, thinking about where else this applies, thinking about the questions that the book brought up for you and answer any exercises in the book that you need to do. Where would this material also fit? What is similar to this? All these types of questions, right? And how does this interact with anything that I already know? And what's it similar to? How does it relate, etc.? So that's what the processing is. Then for me, the output right now is very little, right? But you could say these live streams are an output, but I really want this to be more processing. I want to write more emails, reports. I'm going to get back to writing reports again and creating courses And the output, though, is also, right, this archive for my future self, right, where I can use System 1 to find things that I felt were valuable before, to pull stuff in for stuff I'm creating by using the search function in my Evernote, etc. So the output is both in the current and in the future. Um, the podcast right now, oh, hold on. The podcast right now, oh yeah, okay. That's you were asking, right? Yes, Susie. Let me find that for you right now. But what I was talking about with my podcast, that does not exist yet. The idea is that like to rip apart cool ideas, right, and then have world class experts um, talk it through. Hold on. So I'm just looking here to find one from the company that I know should be here. So let's see. I'm just looking at where this might be for Susie, but I bet you other people will have value for it. Will find it valuable too. Promise you that. Um, okay, yeah, this is podcastnotes.org. So podcastnotes.org, what they do is I have a premium membership, but they give you they review a ton. They give you notes from a ton of podcasts. Most of them free, and then they'll do like compilations for um, for premium members. So definitely something worth checking out. Podcastnotes.org. I'll show it to you guys here. Let me get rid of this here. If you haven't joined our Facebook group, you should have already joined. It's podcastnotes.org, right? I am a member, so I am premium. So let's see. I'm already premium. So like, yeah, see, so supplements of the year, 2019, right? Just most popular podcast notes of all time from the Joe Rogan Experience, the 11 most popular, right? Like Peter Thiel, like so. It's just a lot of really good places. It's a really good service. I find a lot of the stuff that I get from them ends up going straight into my Evernote, and I'm busy marking it up. So let's see. It's 3:45. We can end early. If you guys got questions, I'll be glad to answer them. But there's no reason to just sit around here for no reason. Um, so let's see. I will put this back up though. I think Matt is responsive on his. Okay, let's see. Sounds like Tiago Forte second brain stuff. Totally is, Ron. I mean, Tiago's. I studied PKM before I met Tiago, but that's what put me in touch with Tiago. And Tiago and I worked somewhat closely for a little while, and I was the biggest affiliate for his program. I am a huge fan, and I think he's one of the smartest guys I know. Okay. Hey, Rich, are you planning on converting all your past documents to Evernote notes? I was thinking about processing all my past handwritten notes, audio notes, Word docs, presentations, mind maps, and putting them into Evernote. How would you recommend doing a project like that? Jeremy, I originally thought that, and then when I was talking to Tiago about it, actually, like instead of taking all my book notes and throwing them into Evernote, doing them piecemeal slowly, like as I need something. I think that's a better approach. So, that would mean like going through your stuff, every once in a while and say, okay, this is something that I'm working on. This, I could use this. I could use this. And then doing it that way. The challenge is that you don't want to put so much stuff in Evernote that everything gets too like stuffy, and not because you have too much stuff there, but it's all unorganized and it becomes a great deal of work to process all that information. So that's why I haven't just like done it. Because I still have to then would review each piece, understand what it is, how it's related. Like it takes time. So that's why I haven't done it, Jeremy. I hope that helps answer that. Um, let's see. Where can I find your report, How to Get Business Off the Ground, Momentum, or something along those lines? Saw you talking about it on YouTube, but couldn't find it. Or if you have any new material, you could point me towards on defining the result, niche offer positioning, and getting initial sales for coaches. How about this? Um, Stefan, the join the Facebook group. Where is this here? Um, and that is here. And then inside there is a report called the Hidden Obstacles, which I think is like one of the most important as far as thinking. Read that. And you if you show up to either one of the live streams next week, remind me that I said that I will post another report to the Facebook group that I wrote based on something that I believe will help you. But tell me that next time after you've had a chance to go into the strategic profits group and find the hidden obstacles, and I think you'll enjoy those. So, with that said, guys, I hope this was helpful to you guys. By all means, don't forget to share this, comment more, emotions, all those kinds of things, emoticons. They all help tell Facebook that this was valuable and useful and something that organically should be shared. I want to keep doing these, trying to figure out a repurposing strategy as well. Right now, I'm taking these and I'm moving them to YouTube. That's all I'm doing right now. We're also boosting these posts. So we've had quite a few go over 100,000 views, which is kind of cool. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're watching this on Facebook, please like my fan page and join our group. And with that said, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here. Can't do this alone. And coming up with concepts and breaking them apart is so much more fun to do with other people than it is to do at home alone. And a lot of people have been asking about getting coached by me. We're going to be opening up my coaching program at some point soon, probably in the next month or two. We've also got links for Steal Our Winners finally, so I'm going to get some redirects so that I can actually post them in here. But it's crazy out there, and it really is crazy out there. And as an entrepreneur, more and more we have to think for ourselves. You know, there's no one. There's the right and the left, and they are at odds with each other, and most Americans are collateral damage in the middle. And I just think that we've always had to think for ourselves as entrepreneurs, but now more than ever, we have to really kind of help one another. We have to learn more for ourselves. We have to be less trusting of the media, government, etc. And that means that we're kindred spirits, that we're all here doing the same thing. And if we can learn together and we can get better together and we can grow together, then all the better. So I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for commenting if you did, for asking questions if you did, for sharing if you did, for doing an emoticon if you did. And I just appreciate the back and forth. And it helps me help you, and it also helps me get better. So thanks for that. To Higher Profits and Beyond, I will talk to everyone on Thursday at 6 p.m., Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Until then, to Higher Profits and Beyond, Schefren out.